So joining me today is a man known for his breatharianism, urine therapy, flat earth, but most of all, his expertise on the common law. Dave Murphy, also known as allegedly Dave. Welcome to Eyes Wide Open.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Good to see you after so many years.
Yeah, great to see you. I was just trying to think when the last time we met, and I think it was around about 2011, 2010, in Roger Hayes' house, of all places. Yeah, and I just had this amazing mind expansion when I'd started to learn about Freeman on the land, with commonly known as Dom and all that kind of thing. And Roger had I think he was just arrested a judge in Birkenhead. I think it was just after that.
I think we met before that. I'm pretty sure we met before that, and then we did the arresting the judge. Did you come along to that?
No, but I was in court myself not long after that. It was just after the arrest of the judge, and because that had just happened, there was a ton of police marshalling me into my own hearing. A line of them, literally like a tunnel of police that shepherded me into the court. But that's another story. Yep. So we met in Roger Hayes with Abdul Nur, guy from Sheffield, who was a Muslim who didn't believe in Muhammad, if that's even possible. And then Roger Hayes, who was doing, I think he was doing British Constitution Party back then.
Yeah, he'd just started or something.
Yeah, and your good self. I remember when I went and said to my dad, I'm in with the guys here. These guys are really pushing it, because I'd literally just woken up to the whole freedom on the land thing. It just blew my mind. I went to this meeting with you guys, and it was great. It was really, really exciting. I remember you at the time, you were on it. You were fully on the common law, and you've still been doing it up to this day. Before we get into the meat of it, Dave, tell us a little bit about your background, how you've ended up here.
Okay. Well, I started because I was living in America, and I was at 9/11. So I was literally watching it from across the river. Literally a month before, I turned down a job with Lehman Brothers on the 40th floor of Tower 1.
Wow.
Yeah, so I turned that job down, and I took a job directly across the water in Hoboken. And
what was you doing, Dave?
I was a computer programmer.
Right.
So I was right there watching the whole thing, and it seemed a bit fishy at the time, but it's nothing for me to go on at the time. So I kind of accepted it. But then about 3 or 4 years later, my daughter was trying to figure out some physics homework, and she couldn't do it. So she asked me to help her, and it was a marble on a tabletop, and the tabletop's a metre high. How long does it take the marble to hit the floor? And we worked it out, and she said, "I've got it, Dad, I've got it." I said, not so fast. Let's imagine it's a bowling ball, and it was on top of the World Trade Center. So we worked it out, and it worked out to be about 10 seconds. And that's what, I thought, hang on a second, let me come back and watch the films. And the whole building took 10 seconds to fall. I thought, hang on, how can a building fall through itself at the same speed as a bowling ball falling through empty air?
What an absolutely brilliant way of becoming aware of 9/11 inside job, is doing a physics experiment with your daughter. Awesome.
And so that launched me on a 16, 17 or 18 year quest to figure out what's the truth. And,
well, it's interesting you say that, because my last guest, Richard Grannon, we discussed the same question, and his was also 9/11, right? And I guess mine was 9/11 as well. So it woke up a lot of people, didn't it?
Yeah. But it's what was even more powerful was finding out, going down the rabbit hole, and whenever it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. So you start off in a corner with 9/11, and while you're researching, you find all these other pieces that go off in other directions. And while you focus on 9/11, it's like they're just there. But then, a couple more sort of strengthen that line, and you go off in that direction. All of a sudden, you're in a completely different topic, finding it's linked to 9/11.
Yeah. But I always find that's a problem speaking to people who are interested in real history, forbidden history, real global events, is that because it's so vast, it's difficult to pin the conversation down to one narrative or one thread. It jumps all over the place and can lose coherence as a result. So I think sometimes we have to try and contain the story, the narrative, the information, because it's just so vast and so deep.
Yeah, but when you get to a point where you think you understand what happened, why it happened, who the players are, and the overall goal of what they were doing, then you're kind of free to accept what you've learned, assimilate it into your life, and then move on to the next topic, which has already been suggested by what you found out. So I think I moved on from 9/11 to the New World Order, because I found out about the project for the New American Century and so on. And that led to the financial system, which led to the legal system, which led to the healthcare system, I think, and so on and so on and so on.
We've shared a similar path, Dave. I love the fact that all came from an experiment with a marble with your daughter. That's just brilliant. And I mean, there's one thing as well, is that even though we know 9/11 was such a blatant inside job, even with all the information that has come out about 9/11, and it's so bloody obvious to anyone prepared to look, the biggest issue for me is that 20 odd years on, not one single person has been brought to account for those crimes against humanity, and we're still living with the consequences and the after effects to this day. I mean, this seems to be a bit of an issue that we face, isn't it? No matter how hard we expose the truth, nothing seems to happen.
Well, that's because we've been living in Disneyland all our lives. We interact with this Disneyland version of the world, where we think there's such a thing as justice, where we think there's such a thing as a healthcare system, and proper actual money and actual things, but they don't exist. This is the Disneyland version. So in the real world, the people that set up the system and work for that system will never be punished by that system, because all they're doing is the job that the system's allocated to them.
In a lot of instances, they'll actually be promoted as well.
Exactly. That's what a knighthood is all about.
Do you remember Cressida Dick? She was the commanding officer of the Philip de Mendes shooting in the London Underground. The guy was murdered in cold blood. She was the commander of that operation. Not long after, she was promoted to where she is now, head of the Met.
Yeah, well, that's what a knighthood is all about. The people who get knighthoods aren't nice people. They're being honoured for their service to the system against us. If they do a good job in indoctrinating us into their world, then they get a nice little pat on the back. That's what it is. So yeah, it's a dual system, and or a dual world, a duality, and we interact with a fake version, and we hardly aware of what reality is.
I think that's why the Matrix film was so profound. It was that moment in the movie where he comes out of the pod and he has this realization, of the true nature of reality, that it's a simulation and everything's fake and false, and he has to deal with the true nature of reality, which isn't the most exciting thing in the world. And I think that was why that film was so impactful, because that metaphor applies to everything that you discover along this journey, is that, everything we're told, or a large percentage of it, is lies and fraud and fairy tale, and it's clown world, like you say, but we're living in clown world.
Well, that awakening, that moment, we all shared it. We all sat up in our pods going, this isn't what I thought it was. Yeah.
I was speaking to Richard about this, actually. We came up in conversation, and we were talking about if they made a Matrix pod now, today, would people volunteer? Would they consent to go in the Matrix pod? And we came to the conclusion that yes, they would be lining up round the block, like they're lining up round the block for the vaccine centre. You know, they'll willingly jump into the Matrix pod.
Well, that's what we're seeing at the moment. This is what meta is. The metaverse. The metaverse is going to be the Matrix. So we're seeing that Facebook is now turning into a virtual reality simulation. Yeah, they're aiming to try and beam the internet directly into our skulls. So we're always connected to the internet. Obviously, that's a two-way street. So we become a node on the Internet of Things, directly addressable. That's what the 5G network is all about, to facilitate that massive network of everything, including every man, woman, and child on the earth. And once they get us hooked into the internet, that means the metaverse will be beamed directly into our heads, so take over all of our senses. And you know, yeah, maybe the first generation of people who go into the, you know, play in the metaverse will know that it's a game, but who knows, the next generation who get born into this metaverse will think the metaverse is real. And maybe they won't even know about the real world.
Yeah. You will live in the pod, you will eat the bugs, you will own nothing, and you will be happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty grim, really, isn't it, Dave?
It is. It's
yeah,
grim.
I feel like this is gallows humor, you know.
It's grim if you subscribe to the idea that these people, and I use inverted commas there, these people are invulnerable, they're all powerful, and they're going to win. They're not going to win. This whole story's been already written, and you know, hint, they lose. They don't win this. You know, humanity wins this. But that's not to say that a whole lot of us aren't going to, you know, are going to make it. You know, because there's already a lot of people who've succumbed to the jab who are essentially the Walking Dead.
Yeah, I know, it's a pretty sad prospect, isn't it, really? So let's move on. So that kind of led you to multiple things, as you said, down multiple paths and rabbit holes and never-ending tunnels of discovery. How did you come across, I guess, the Freeman on the land led you to the common law? Would that be a good estimate?
Yes, yeah, and I got led into the Freeman on the land because, again, I was looking at the New World Order, yeah. And I was listening to what's the guy's name?
Winston Stroud?
No, it's Maxwell. Jordan.
Oh, yeah, Jordan Maxwell. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said something about you know, the name and you know, the capita diminutio maxima, all that, and I couldn't understand what was going on, what he was talking about, but some of it stuck in my memory. And then I came across somebody called Robert Menard.
Oh God, yeah, I remember him.
Canadian guy, yes.
Yeah,
he's still around. Would you believe he's still around?
Really? So does he still do the same stuff?
I haven't heard him do anything. I'm connected to him on Facebook, so every now and then he'll comment on something. But you know,
yeah, he was massive, wasn't he? At that time, he just absolutely was everywhere. I remember discovering it myself, and it really was a mind-altering discovery. It really changed my entire paradigm, how I look at the world. It was amazing stuff, amazing times as well. Quite heady, you know. And
I remember the moment that it clicked into place for me was, so in America, you know, you get your checkbook, and, you know, there's, obviously your name is in all capital letters at the top, and the line that you sign on looks a little odd. Yeah, it looks a little thick. Okay, and I think it was Jordan Maxwell again who said that signing line that you sign your check on has the initials MP after it. It stands for microprint. And he said, go and have a look at that line that you sign on. So I grabbed my check and got my magnifying glass out and looked at that line, and literally that line was literally the words authorised signatory, really sort of printed tiny,
Wow.
so it looks like a line. So that's when it clicked that when I was signing that as me, I was signing as surety or the authorised signatory for the capital letter name.
Well, it's like being a director of a limited company and signing behalf of the company, isn't it?
Exactly. But,
Yeah.
you assume that you're just signing your own cheque for your... No, it's like it's this game that's being played and you don't know you're playing.
So can you briefly, so before we move on to the common law, can you briefly give an overview of the Freeman on the land theory? Now, I used a lot of it in my time and I still use a hybrid version of it myself to this day, my own version. But what I found is that it was very, 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 very difficult to enforce in the courts. It was ignored, it was overlooked, it was ridiculed, all those things. But I thought the theory was sound. Right? I thought the theory was solid, but trying to get through those gatekeepers was almost impossible. So could you give us just a brief overview of the actual concept behind it?
I'm not sure I can, actually, because I've never actually, I mean, even though I called myself a Freeman,
Yeah.
I've never actually subscribed to a kind of model of it as such.
Well, okay,
You know,
then. So let me rephrase
whole-
that. Can you describe the name and the birth certificate, which I think is probably the anchor point of that whole theory?
Yeah, but it's not the anchor point of that theory. It's the anchor point of
Okay.
of what's really going on in the world.
Yeah.
So yes, so the idea is that when you're born, your parents register you, which the word register actually, doesn't mean what everyone thinks it does. It actually means to hand over title ownership of whatever you're registering to whoever you're registering with. So when you're born, your parents inform on you and register you, so that the state owns you. You become a ward of the state. And
Well, I think the deal is that it's like a protection racket, isn't it? You sign over some ownership of this item, product, thing, and the king, the state, will protect you from it being stolen from you. But they're the ones that would do the stealing,
Yeah, but when I've sort of gone into it a bit more, you look at the Cester KV Act
Yeah.
of 1666, and you find an intentional idea, because they wrote that bit of legislation in French so that the English wouldn't know what was in it, and it has been written right in the middle of the Fire of London, so nobody was paying attention to what they were doing in Parliament. Everyone was too busy avoiding being burnt alive.
Yeah.
So they enacted this legislation that declared everyone dead, and because they didn't know who was dead and who was alive, everyone's dead. So we're going to administer everyone's share of the country. So they became the shareholder of the entire country, and they gave us a provision that we could reclaim our share of the country if we present ourselves as being alive before the age of 7. But they didn't show you how to do that, or they've never to this day shown us how to do that.
So the Commonwealth of the country is held in trust until we, as the beneficiary, come forward to claim our fair share. Yeah.
But we've been given until the age of 7 to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Isn't 14 another age? Isn't it every 7 years that you can come forward?
well, all I know about is the first 7 years. I don't know about
Okay.
that because up until the age of 8, you get a title. You're automatically given a title. Do you know what that title is?
Mister?
No.
Oh, master.
Master.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, masters can't be accosted. They can't be imprisoned. They can't be fined. Just like a 7-year-old can't be, yeah?
Yeah, it's an interesting title to call a child, isn't it? Master. Why would you
Yeah.
call a child master? It doesn't add up.
Because right at that point, they still have the potential to reclaim their share of the country.
Yeah.
And truly be a master, yeah? But after the age of 8, right, you get a different title,
Yeah, Mister. Yeah.
which when you look it up means somebody who's engaged in mystery, M-I-S-T-E-R-Y. Yeah, and when you look that up, it means a trade or a business. So the word
It's a legal fiction to allow the man to operate in commerce. It's a vehicle as such.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is the person. Yeah, a person is a corporation. So that title is indicative that if you use it, that means you're admitting to be a corporation and not a living man.
So this is what people call the straw man, yeah? The vehicle that's used to operate in commerce. But why do we need a vehicle to operate in commerce?
Well, we don't. The government needs that because here's the hierarchy, yeah? So you've got the creator above everything, yeah? The creator created us. So we're one step below the creator. There's no one, really, who can tell us what to do because we're one step below the creator. Collectively, we created government. So government is below us. Government cannot impose on a sovereign being, on a living man or woman. Okay? Now, government create underneath it all these artificial straw men, these legal fictions. You know, person, citizen, taxpayer, voter, driver, all these things that just don't exist in reality, just exist on paper. Okay, and the trick to all this is to get us to abandon our sovereign status up here and accept a lower status as one of these things underneath government.
What I found is, Dave, and that the whole system is built upon consent. They have to have your consent to do any of this. Right? And they use billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to hire the best psychologists, psychiatrists, marketers, whatever they need in order to create the propaganda that compels people to consent to entering into these relationships, these contracts. Best seen during this vaccine campaign, in which everyone's just consented to do it, haven't it? Nobody's been forced. And they can't force us under the common law. We can talk about that later, but what do you think on that?
Well, yes, they do, but they also use a lot of just basic tricks to trick us into consenting. The reason why they need us to consent is something we'd call universal law. That anything you put into this world is going to come back at you multiplied, magnified, yeah? So if I was to punch you in the face, right, then I'd have just committed a crime, right, caused you harm, and you know, that punching you in the face is going to come back at me. I'm going to trip over and smash my head in or something, yeah? Oh, sorry. My phone's ringing and I just don't need to hear that.
Woo!
So yeah, punch.
That's the party side of allegedly, Dave.
Yeah. So if I punch you, it's going to come back on me. But if I was to say, Lawrence, can I?
Would you say that's like a cosmic law? Then we're talking about something in a higher realm law here. Yeah. Yeah.
This is one of the rules of this place. That whatever you put out is going to come back at you. So if I was to go to you, Lawrence, can I punch you in the face? And you say, yeah, go ahead. And I punch you, right? Well, now I haven't committed a crime because we've made an agreement, and it's not going to come back on me.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, they use all sorts of tricks to get our agreement so that the universal law doesn't apply to them.
Because I always thought that was a really deep insight into how the system works, because the system at the highest level is run by some crazy, dark, weird psychopaths who have no problem inflicting pain, suffering and torment on people. Yet, they still require consent. I mean, you know, if they are the tyranny that they look like they are, why do they, you know, go down this consent route, which I find incredible. Now, I don't know whether it's because of cosmic law, which, okay, I think plays a part, or that it may be due to the common law that protects our rights at some level. But even then, if you're a tyrant, why would you care about the common law in the first place?
Exactly. It's not to do with the common law. It's the fact that universal law, right, says it's going to, any evil you do, it's going to rebound on you. So they want to avoid that at all costs. So, and people think that they have to tell us what they're doing. It's not about telling us what they're doing. It's about getting us to agree with what they're doing. Yeah. So one of the tricks is to use our tacit acquiescence, which means our silent agreement.
I think that's a really important point, Dave. Could you just expand a little bit on acquiescence?
Yeah, sure. So the maxim in law is he who is silent consents. So if somebody makes you an offer and you remain silent, then you consent. Just in the same way as if somebody is being murdered right in front of you, is being beaten to death right in front of you, and you just stand there and you remain silent, then you are now complicit in that murder, because you remained silent. You didn't stand up against it. You didn't say no, So they use that trick against us all the time. So, and I give the example of if you go to court. The judge might make a pronouncement like, I'm going to fine you £500. And the next thing he does is that he'll pause. He'll make a pause. He might cover that pause by shuffling paper or looking around the court for the next person to talk to. But he will pause. And that pause is your opportunity to object. Yeah. And if you don't object in that small, narrow window, yes, now you've agreed. Yeah. So yes, silent acquiescence is one of the tricks, and the government uses it as well. When they say that we're going to enforce a mask mandate on public transport in 2 weeks' time there will be a mask mandate. Well, they could say, well, from now on, you must wear a mask on public transport. But they don't. They say, in 2 weeks, we're going to do this. And that time is your opportunity to object. And if you don't object, well, okay, mask mandate it is.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. I know. It's amazing how well conditioned the majority of the population are to just blindly follow the government's commands.
Yeah, but there's the other thing that humans, because we're a collaborative species, we defer to authority, So, and they use that against us. So, another example I use is if you take your clothes back to a clothes shop and you don't have the receipt, there'll be a bod on the desk who will say, "Oh, sorry, you can't return these clothes. You need a receipt." 9 out of 10 people are going to say, "Okay," and they're going to go home, right? Yeah. That one person who stands there will say, "Get the manager out here," and the manager's going to come out and say, "You know what? I'll do it for you just this once."
Yeah.
But the truth is, he has to do it. It's the law. He has to give it, no matter whether you got a receipt or not. But it makes good business sense to put an authority figure out front to lie to people, because 9 out of 10 people are just going to blindly accept that lie. And this is what's going on with COVID.
That's one of the big insights I had from all that period, was the illusion of authority that the state casts over the population. And they do this by making authority figures appear to have authority through the uniforms, through the judges being on high pedestals, the courtrooms being intimidating places. This is all to create the illusion of authority so that we comply, so that we consent, and they can get their way. I think it's best illustrated by Dom Jolly. When Dom Jolly was doing that show, I forget what it was. Remember the guy with the hello? He was doing like a skit show. It was a comedy show. And what he was doing is going into the general public, and he was dressing up like a traffic warden, right? But it wasn't a proper uniform. It was like a costume. And then people were walking through the town square, and he had a clipboard, and he'd go, "You there, stop. Don't walk here. I want you to walk around that road. and avoid the pavement. There was nothing on the pavement, and people would just go along with it because he had the illusion of authority, which was created with the uniform.
Yeah, and we saw it during this COVID thing. There was a guy standing outside a shop with a lint roller. Anyone who was walking to the shop, he'd go over them with a lint roller, and people were just standing there doing it.
It's so sad, though, isn't it? Really, that it's so sad. That's how easy it is.
Yeah, it is. The thing they've made us forget is that we are the authority. Yeah. I use the example of there's a meme where you've got a politician at the end of a plank, and that plank is over the edge of a cliff, and on the other end of the plank are the people. Whole group of people. Now, you could put the Queen on that plank, on the end of the plank, or the police. If we lose interest and we start walking off the edge of the plank, they're going down because they get their authority from us.
But they've been elected into their office by the people. They haven't been elected into their office by the government or by the Queen or the sovereign. They're there to represent us.
Even the Queen, even the monarchy.
The
monarchy governs by consent.
Well, that's their coronation oath. That's her coronation oath, isn't it? That we give her the power of sovereign, of monarch, in order that she, or the monarch, protects our rights, our duties, our privileges from those who seek to take them away.
Right. So just imagine the government is like our butler. Okay?
Yeah.
And so, one day we might give our butler our wallet to go down the shops and get a whole load of food for us. Okay? And then we might have forgotten that we've left our wallet with the butler. Now the butler's spending stuff left, right, and centre, and justifying. Oh, I need to buy that for you. I need to buy a very an Aston Martin that I will drive for you, so I can serve you better. Yeah. And then that butler is saying, you know what? If you want money, you have to beg me for it. If you want, more food, again, you have to apply to me to get it, and I'll decide whether you have it. So now, because we've forgotten who we are, our butler is giving us orders.
The concept and idea of sovereignty is so alien to most people. We're not taught these ideas, are we? And if we want to try and understand them, we have to go and search ourselves. And it's not that easy to find out the information on. It's a very esoteric subject, isn't it? Sovereignty. We are all individual sovereigns and can display the power of a sovereign. It's, what does that even mean to most people, including me? I don't really fully understand, that concept.
Well, it's difficult because our enemy runs the schooling system. Our enemy owns the TV networks. Our enemy owns all the media. Our enemy has gone to a lot of trouble to make us forget that we're sovereign. So when you're in school, you get trained to answer questions. An authority figure asks you a question, you're trained to answer it blindly, without question. So the teacher asks you a question, you answer it, So that works into later life when, another authority figure in a fluorescent jacket, asks you questions, you automatically answer because that's how you've been trained. The television tells you you're lower than low, you're nothing, your life means nothing, you're an insignificant worm in this system, so you grow up believing it, and you forget that you are the sovereign. You're the one who has the power in this system, and it goes way further than that, but that's another talk. But you forget that, and then on top of that you get the positive programming that these people that we put on a pedestal are way higher than us. The Prime Minister is way higher than us. We have to reverence that person. The Queen is way higher than us. We have to reverence that person. It's
interesting, the title, isn't it? Prime Minister. He's the number one minister to the sovereign. He's administering to the sovereign. It's a subservient title.
It should be ministering to us.
Yeah,
should
well,
be
we are the
ministering
sovereign,
to
aren't
us.
we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we forget. It's like a story of the farmer who finds the eagle's egg. So he finds an eagle's egg lying there, and it's still warm. So he takes this eagle's egg and puts it under one of his hens, and the eaglet hatches with all the chicks, and that eagle thinks it's a chicken because all the chicks that were born with him, he thinks he's one of them, are pecking around on the ground, and they can't fly, so he doesn't know he can fly. So he lives his whole life as a chicken because he doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
What do you think then about, this is probably more of a political idea, is if we are to live in a hierarchy, yeah, I don't know whether that is the way we should live, right? But if we are to live in a hierarchy, do we need to transfer some of our sovereignty to the monarch, the sovereign, in order to live in peace, order and harmony, as long as the sovereign does not abuse that responsibility? Or the other option is that there is no hierarchy and it's anarchy. What are your thoughts on that?
Anarchy. That's the best thing, because again, we've been taught an alternate view of anarchy. You know, people running through the streets, beating people up, burning cars, all that stuff. No, all anarchy is no rulers.
Yeah.
And then when you realise that, the basis of common law is that you can do anything you like as long as you don't cause harm, injury or loss to any people or their property. Yeah? So it's as simple as that. That implies there aren't any rulers, because you can do anything you like as long as you don't cause harm, injury or loss. If that's the case, then why do you need anyone to rule you, to regulate you, to restrict you? Right? The only restriction is don't cause harm, injury or loss. You don't need a ruler.
Okay, I think that's a nice segue into moving into the common law. So I know that you do presentations on the common law, which kind of incorporates some of the birth certificate information as well. And during the pandemic, I noticed that there was a resurgence of interest in the common law, because people were putting up a resistance and they were trying to find out what tools work for them, what our rights are. And I noticed that the common law was popping up again, because when I was active during challenging the mortgages and stuff in 2009 to probably about 2016, that was a resurgence of the common law. Then I think it died off a little bit. I don't know why, but it seems that it's come back with the pandemic, and where people were being threatened with getting their businesses closed, and there was a lot of people putting up notices about trying to exercise their rights under the Constitution, the English Constitution, and the police were riding roughshod over it. So can you give us a little insight into your understanding of the common law? Because I think it's generally misunderstood, or it's confused about what it is and what it can be. So could you give us your insights on what your research has been?
Right, well, the common law is essentially natural law written down, and I've summarised it earlier on, that it cause no harm, injury or loss to people or their property. Don't be fraudulent in your contract, so don't lie, and don't threaten harm, injury or loss. And that's it. But there's also a whole body of case law that has been decided by juries over the years, to act, on all the nuances in between those simple rules. So that's
Let's
all
talk
that
about
common law
case
is.
law.
It's what's written on your heart anyway, because we all know what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
And all this case law to deal with the things that aren't so obvious. So essentially that's it. And but the problem is that this system has created a thin veneer of a different system called the legal system over the top of common law. and so we all interact with the legal system and actually not common law. They're trying to get us to forget there's such a thing as common law, and all there is the legal system. They're two completely different things. Right?
Could you give a little bit more insight into case law? Because when we ask, what's common law, there's the one explanation you said, and then if you ask the legal people, or if you look it up online, it will say that common law is built on precedent, which is judge-made law. Yeah. How does the idea of judge-made law coexist with your definition earlier? Right.
Okay. So what you got to remember is this legal veneer is all about changing, using word magic to change your perception. It's not judge-made law. It's jury-made law. Yeah. The judge had no power in a court other than administration, making sure that proceedings go along nice and smoothly. Yeah, he has no power.
He's the man in black. He's the referee, isn't he?
He's a referee. He's no power in a real courtroom. The jury are the ones with the power. Okay, so it's juries who make the law. But
is that a fundamental? Is that a fundamental part of the common law trial by jury?
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is why, and one of the reasons why they've got rid of juries in non-criminal cases is because a jury has a power that they don't want you to exercise. Yeah. It's called jury nullification, which means if a jury decides that the statute that the person is being prosecuted under is unfair, then they can strike that statute out, and there's nothing the government can do. It's like if somebody's being done for speeding under the Road Traffic Act, and the jury decide, you know what, the Road Traffic Act is unfair. Well, then that's struck out. It's gone.
It's a really powerful weapon that the people could exercise over tyrannical governments. Jury nullification. It's very difficult to find information about it, and they don't want you knowing about jury nullification. I think even if as a defendant, if you talk about jury nullification to a jury, the judge will try to stop you. And it's also been called the fourth branch of government. The jury has been called the fourth branch of government because you have the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. Well, the jury is the fourth branch because of jury nullification, which is an incredibly powerful remedy in the hands of the people.
But the problem is that they've restricted jury trials to criminal cases where jury nullification doesn't have any power. You can't nullify a crime. Yeah, It only applies to legislation. Okay. So that's why they've created these unlawful administrative hearings that look like court cases. Yeah, if there is not a jury in the room, it's not a court. So somewhere in Halsbury's Laws of England, it actually says that. Let's see if I can get the quote right. There is no provision in English law for administrative hearings. And no act can be, no legislation can be enacted to legitimise them. So even Halsbury's Laws of England says they're illegitimate.
I think what we see as well is a conflict between the sovereign man, the individual's common law rights, conflicted with this commercial law, which is administering the legal fiction, the straw man, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's where you're finding a lot of conflict, because the Magistrates Court, I mean, that's just a joke of a court, isn't it? It's a court governed literally by statute. It doesn't have any common law history or anything like that. It used to be called the police court originally, and then they changed it to the Magistrate Court, but it's wholly governed by statute, and it's in that court that they deal with the administrative cash cow offences, like speeding,
It's not a court, though.
It's
That's
not a
the
court.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there was a Freeman, amazing Freeman, who is dead now, but his name was Guy Taylor, and
I remember Guy. Guy was great. Yeah.
He was amazing man. Now he went into court once, and he said to the judge, "Now I'm going to ask you a question, and you've got to be very careful how you answer this. I'm going to ask you if you're on your oath today, and if you say you're not, then I'm going to arrest you for impersonating a public official. But if you say you are, well, I don't see a jury here, so I'm going to arrest you for unlawful administration of your oath."
Hobson's choice.
Yeah. And literally the judge ran out of there, and he came back in and he said, "I'm going to dismiss this case, but not for the reasons you said." You know.
Was there a video of that? Was that like is that the famous case, or was that somebody else? Was that Roger Hayes?
There might be. I haven't seen the video of that, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there would be, because Guy is not shy about filming in court. So yeah.
Yeah, there was some amazing high points during that period where everybody was challenging the system and they were challenging the courts, and there were floods of police.
It was an amazing time.
It was an amazing time, wasn't it? It was great. We really pushed hard. I felt as if it came to an end cycle with the Tom Crawford case. I felt like it was the end of that particular cycle, but it feels as if maybe it's coming back again now. There's more interest.
It was killed off because the government essentially put in lots of spies and trolls and agents and stuff, and they got everyone fighting with each other. They started closing down the hub sites that we used to congregate on, and then it just petered out.
What have you been teaching as part of your common law presentation? What tools are you giving to people rather than just theoretical ideas? Are you giving people tools that they can actually use themselves in order to demonstrate and exercise their sovereignty and to use the common law as it's there for them?
Well, absolutely. I've concentrate on all the practical things that you can do. Okay, all the things that are likely to impose themselves on you. I just concentrate on things that you can physically do to challenge them and beat them, because and I know, because I've used them I've either used them myself, or I've been there when other people have used them.
Yeah.
So a good example and it's based on things that people don't ordinarily know, but once you show it to them, it's like obvious. So a good example is if somebody orders you to do something. So if you're ordered to, you get a liability order, for instance. Well, orders are chargeable. Yeah. So if you go into McDonald's and order a cheeseburger, what happens next?
Yeah, you get given a cheeseburger.
No, you pay.
Oh, you got to pay first. Okay, well.
Who sets the price of that cheeseburger?
McDonald's.
McDonald's do. So you could walk into McDonald's and say, "I'd like a cheeseburger," and the guy behind the counter would say, "Okay, it's 25 quid for a cheeseburger. Do you still want that cheeseburger?" Now it's your choice. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to, or do you want to say, "No, I'm not prepared to proceed under those terms and conditions." Right. So
well, I mean, you see that most exemplified when you ask the police, "Is that an order?" And they say, "No, that's not an order." Because they know,
Because if they say it's not an order, it's a request, and you can politely decline a request.
Yeah.
So
if it's an order, it means that they're going to arrest you.
Well, if it's an order, right? Yeah. Well, if you want, you can work for free, but you don't have to work for free. Yeah. If somebody orders you to do something, you say, "I'm happy to comply with your order, but as I said, I don't work for free. If you want me to service your order, my charges are £4,000, or plus an inconvenience fee of £150.
Why not?
Whatever, Because again, whoever's being ordered to do something sets the price.
So it's funny you should say that, because That's not just... one second, I've got a book here that I just want to show you. This book here, it's been on my shelf for years, Police Misconduct, and you're talking about saying that you can charge the police. Well, this book tells you can charge the police. This is written by lawyers. It says, you know, if you get pulled over by the police, and all you've got to do when you get pulled over by the police is literally, you don't have to lower your window. All you have to do in this system is to put your driving license up at the window, right? And the police can't ask you to open your window, or force you to open your window. They then have to go and check your details on the machine. And the common law, the case law, states that they've got 5 minutes in order to determine your details. Anything after those 5 minutes is false imprisonment. And for every minute, you can charge the police as part of a civil action. Yeah? So when you say you can bill the police, you can do it. It's part of the case law.
Okay, but you can also make an agreement, because you're dealing with, the police are a company. They're a for-profit business, you know, operating for profit, getting their profit from you, right? So they're a business trying to do business with you. You can do business with them.
Yeah.
So you can make personal agreements. Yeah, if they're ordering to you to do something, right? Well, orders are always chargeable. Yes.
But don't the police have two capacities? Don't the police have two capacities? When they're a constable, they're acting, you know, under their oath, and they have to follow the common law. And then they also act in the capacity as officer, who are just there to administer statutes, levies, fines, etc. Would you say that's an accurate description?
No, they've only got one. They've only got one capacity.
Yeah, but they operate. Yeah, but they operate in the other one, don't they? Falsely, and get you to comply and consent.
Falsely.
Yeah.
No, they are underneath that uniform. They're still a constable.
That's right.
Because they all swear the constable's oath. They're just being tasked to do illegal things.
Yeah.
And under the guise of being this policy enforcer. Yeah, they're not allowed to enforce civil statutes. It's against their remit. Okay, it's what's known as ultra vires, beyond the scope of their office. Yeah, and you hold them. And this is when I teach peace constables, I tell them the big stick is to, you know, film them and let them know or make them aware of their limitations.
Tell us a little bit about that, Dave. Tell us a little bit about training peace constables. That sounds like an interesting angle.
So we're training, you know, the people around the country, training peace constables, people to act as peace constables, what the police should be doing, okay, and, you know, upholding common law, protecting people, protecting and serving people. So part of the job is to stand down police officers, bailiffs, council workers, whoever's trying to impose themselves on the people. Okay, and you do that, and I call it the big stick. The big stick is every peace constable will have a body cam. Okay, so you make sure you're filming them, and then you know there's statutes that limit them. An example is, let's say you ask to see the police officer's warrant card. Okay, and they might say no. You ask him again, can I see your warrant card? No. You say, I'm filming you, and according to the Police Act 1996, Section 90, you are obliged to show your warrant card on demand. Now, can I see your warrant card? That's a big
Which
stick.
demonstrates the power of the civilian sovereign, doesn't it? Because you're telling the police what they have to do.
Exactly. And, you know, as a sovereign, that is your job. You know that these people are underlings below you. Right? You know, we have elevated them above us, you know, because television has frightened us when we, you know, about seeing them. That's why there's so many cop shows on TV. Yeah, so when the blue lights come on behind you, it doesn't matter how brave you are or how knowledgeable you are, you see those blue lights behind you, you get that stab of fear of, is it me? You know, what have I done? Yeah. Same thing if you see those uniforms coming towards you. You know, oh, is it me? Well, they're coming for me. You know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right.
They've conditioned us, haven't they? You know.
They've conditioned us.
And in those cop shows, what you see is when someone gets arrested, what's the first thing they do is they sing like a canary, and they never have a lawyer. So whether you should have a lawyer is another question, but the way they create, I think it's Line of Duty. Have you heard of Line of Duty? It's actually quite an entertaining show, right? It's on BBC. It's a cop show. They talk about Freemasons and stuff. It's just surprising because it's BBC. However, every single person that they arrest and interview, they've never got a solicitor, and nobody ever takes the right to silence. They just all blab. You know, and it's part of the conditioning by the media, so that when people do get pulled by the police or arrested by the police, is that they think that they should just talk like a canary, sing like a canary, and do so without having a lawyer present.
Yeah, and of course there's other cop shows that show police, you know, breaking into people's houses, you know, getting people up by the wall with their arms behind their backs and doing all sorts of things that they can't actually do. But if you watch it on TV, you get a false impression, a false reality created in your mind that they can do all these things. So they get away with it.
This book is actually really, really good. It tells you what the police can and can't do under the common law, and what your remedies are if they do breach their office. You know, and do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I basically tell the police constables that there is essentially a handful of legislation that you just have to memorise. Yeah. Okay, maybe 10 to 12 acts of Parliament to memorise, and then you can stand down anyone.
What would you say the most important case out of those 10 or 12 are? What would you say the most important one is? Sorry.
Oh, okay. So
Rice versus Connolly.
That's a good one. It's a good one. But for me, is claiming that a statute is law. Okay, what was that? Straight out of my head. It's criminal conversion of a civil statute, which is gross negligence, which is equal to fraud by misrepresentation, which is the Fraud Act 2006, Section 2. Right? Now, I spoke to an ex-policeman in one of the stand in the parks I was doing, and we were chatting about peace constables, and he told me when he gets out, when the police get in front of somebody who knows what they're talking about the law, it terrifies them.
Yeah. Because they know they're one false move away from being sued, aren't they? You know. Exactly.
Yeah. And they're not taught the law. They're not taught the law at all. So they realise that they're in a disadvantage when somebody actually knows what they're talking about. I think there's another rule, another bit of legislation. The Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, Section 26. It's the abuse of position by a police constable acting for a third party to cause somebody a loss. So whenever you see the police helping a bailiff, for instance, yeah.
Oh, I know all about that.
Yeah, you know about that.
Yeah, I know all about that.
But yeah, if you find one that actually is helping,
well, then that's
a bailiff,
important. That's important because I think people need to understand the distinction between the police being there to enforce the criminal law and bailiffs operating under the civil law, right? And that the police should not be interfering in the civil law. It's a civil matter. It's private between the parties. And the only time that the police should interfere in those situations if there is a breach of the peace. And as long as you don't commit the breach of the peace, then the police should always be there to protect you from the other party who are breaching the peace.
Right, that's it. So when you quote that act, which is, again, Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, Section 26, right, well, it carries a sentence of 14 years in prison.
Wow.
Which has teeth, right? And you mention that, you tell them that you're filming, right, and say, are you really trying to act for this bailiff? Because that's what it sounds like, and you're now skating very close to the breaching this act.
He becomes private security, doesn't he? At that point, he's private security for the bailiff. He's using the state's monopoly on violence, which is what we transfer to the state in order to administer it justly. Right? Is that he's then transferring that monopoly on violence to a private party?
Yes, and there are penalties for that. You know, the other thing about that is a breach of the peace. Yeah, again, people don't know what a breach of the peace is.
Yeah.
So there's a grey area that they exploit because people. The muggles out there think a breach of the peace is if you're too loud or you cause an affray of some kind. No. Let's see if I remember the definition. It's an act done or threatened to be done which actually causes harm to a person or in his presence his property or is likely to cause such harm to be done. So you've actually got to harm somebody or threaten to harm somebody or look like you're going to harm somebody for there to be a breach of the peace. Or harm or cause loss.
It's the fundamental commission of the office of constable is to maintain the peace, the king's peace. Yeah. That's what their commission is all about. You know, and I think if we understand breach of the peace, then we're halfway there in being able to exercise and demonstrate our rights when interacting with the police, because they're looking to trip us up all the time, right? And they're looking to even compel you to breach the peace, because the moment you do, that's when they can activate the violence of their office, arrest you, detain you, throw you into a cell, all those things.
Yep. So they're working on everyone's ignorance of the law of these statutes, and you know, if you as I said, all I did was memorize that one little piece of information, and it nullified when the police tried to say, "Oh, well, you're causing a breach of peace." Have I, officer? I understand the definition of breach of peace is an act done or threatened to be done, blah blah blah. And you know, did I do that? I'm not sure I did. Can you explain that I did that? That's it. All goes away, because he expected by saying breach of the peace, it's like we go, oh, okay, sir, whatever you say, sir. You know.
So is that part of what you're doing, Dave? Are you going around the country training people with this vital information so that they know when they interact with police, or they can share that with others in their community? Is that part of what you're doing?
My remit here is to get as many people to understand that they are sovereign beings and help them to conduct themselves in that way. And knowing how to, not pay council tax and not and get out of fraudulent debts and do things like that. That's just a byproduct. Once you know who you are, you can conduct yourself in a way that's above all this stuff, and that's true power. And it's just I'm trying to empower people.
I think you're right. It's once you understand the fundamentals, you don't really need the law, the papers, the documents, because you know the fundamentals and you can operate it, and people take notice if you act like somebody who's confident about their own innate sovereignty.
Yeah, in my talk, I show a couple of videos of people who have realised who they are, and they're talking to police, as sovereigns. Why are you asking me questions?
Yeah.
Have you seen me commit a crime? No. Is there a contract you can show me that I've signed that I've, well, if there is no contract and I've not committed a crime, why are you speaking to me? They've got nothing. They've literally got nothing.
I mean, the police could be heroes. I mean, the office of constable itself is a noble office. It's just been terribly abused.
It was a noble office back in the days of, and I think in my lifetime, I just caught the tail end of it. That it was a Dixon of Dock Green type guy who was the local Bobby on the beat, who would know everyone in the community. Everyone in the community would know him. Yeah, he would go around and hello Fred, all right, he'd just sit down and chat to people. He saw kids scrumping apples in the neighbour's yard. He'd give them a clip round the ear and say, "Don't do that again, or I'm going to tell your mum." That guy that everyone respected. That got changed.
I remember speaking to somebody. He was an ex-copper. It was must have been around 2011, and he recounted this story of when Tony Blair was in office. there was a decision made to change the nature of the police. And one of the first acts they did was to give early retirement to all of the old school coppers that was still in the force. Yeah, so if you were 50, 55 and you went for early retirement, or they kind of compelled you to have early retirement, they cleared out all of the old school and then brought in this new wave of police officer who were uneducated on the law. Yeah, they in large, respect were university graduates, but most importantly, they were easily manipulated, willing to follow orders whether they were legal or not, and psychopathic to some degree. Yeah, and then we saw this new police force, which was another legacy of Blair, and that's kind of what we're seeing now, which has led us to the point where during the lockdowns, we saw the abuse of our fundamental rights to assembly, foundational right of any free country and of England, and banning protests. And I was a victim of that. I got arrested, talked about it a few times, but it seemed to me that the police revelled in that. They absolutely didn't care about following any, common law or written law. They just did what the government told them to do regardless. What are your thoughts on how the police have dealt with the pandemic situation, and if the common law exists at all, what we can do about it?
Well, to answer the second question first, the common law always exists. It is the the fundamental underpinnings of this society. Okay, so despite what they try and tell you that no, it doesn't exist anymore, it's old hat. No, it's the fundamental basis of our society. Now you're right. The police have been reformed into, and we know because it went from a police service to a police force. Service, force, two different methodologies. Yeah. So literally, it's been morphed into something completely different, and that's a hallmark of this whole society. We accept something because it sounds good and it seems good, but very slowly, boiling frog styley, they change it to something completely different, and before you know it, you're looking at something that's harmful to you that you thought was beneficial. And the thing you missed out of that, your analysis of the police, is that they stopped requiring intelligence in police. Anyone who scored high on the a high IQ, they refused. They didn't take them on. They only took the people of a lower IQ. Again, because they didn't want people thinking and questioning stuff. Yeah. So yes, it's we're no longer dealing with the same same police service as we thought we did. We thought we had.
What were your experiences during lockdown? Did you come in contact with police? Were you out protesting at all? What was your feedback from that situation?
Well, my experience is a bit odd, really.
You've only ever had a good experience with the police.
Well, no, it's like I helped organise, pretty much organise the COVID Lie Tour. So we literally went all around the country, doing street activism, telling people what was really going on. And halfway through the tour, the police started actually trying to arrest us. And at one point they arrested everybody except me for organising this thing. Even though pretty much it was easy for them to know. Well, it's that guy. He organised it. So I don't know what was going on. One of the theories is that it could be because they were doing this whole let Black Lives Matter do anything they want type thing. Maybe it was that. I don't know. But I've been in the thick of it all. and yet I've been left unscathed. Don't
You
know
lead
why.
a charmed life, Dave. You lead a charmed life.
I think I must do.
Okay, so let's move into. I've noticed videos online of you serving a notice of liability against vaccine centres and schools. Yeah, can you give me some insight into what that was about, why you were doing it, and what power you think that has?
Well, so we're doing it because obviously they're rolling out all these vaccinations. We all know. I mean, anyone who's awake knows that this is a culling of humanity. Yeah, these vaccines aren't there to benefit anyone. There's no virus out there. It's there to essentially they're just euthanasia shots. You know, they're trying to. The elite are trying to reduce the population, and they've already told us they're going to do it using vaccinations, and here it is. Yeah, so obviously there are places like vaccination centres where people think they're doing the right thing by vaccinating people. They think they're heroes of the world's heroes by vaccinating the public and saving people's lives and all that sort of thing. Well, we're there to say, well, actually, no. Yeah. Here's the information. Here are the number of people dying of this thing, yeah, that you're not getting to find out about. Yeah. And even this number is literally 1/100th the actual figure. Here are the reasons why the thing doesn't exist in the first place. Here's how the government have fooled you into believing this is true. Right? You can research here. Here's all the links and everything. You can find out for yourself. Okay? But now we're telling you that what you're doing is illegal, unlawful, and it's crimes against humanity. Now, if anybody dies as a result of what you are doing right here, you are now held personally liable for your action.
They can't just say we were following orders, Gov, can they?
No,
Yeah.
that's all. That argument has already been dispelled with the Nuremberg trials. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just following orders is no defence. But
No.
once you've been notified that this is what you're doing, if somebody dies because of what you're doing, you are now liable. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, you can't
You're
plead
liable.
ignorance. That's the point of a notice, isn't it? And a notice, we haven't touched on this, but notice is a fundamental part of the common law. You know, no action can be brought against you without valid notice. And if an action is brought against you without notice, you can say, I wasn't noticed to this.
I was notified,
and the case can be thrown out under Section 14 of the Magistrates Court Act 1980. Really good statute. So in this case, with the vaccines, is what you're saying to people who are administering the vaccine, that if anybody suffers an adverse effect without you giving them informed consent, is that the important element to it? Because if they give them informed consent, they are no longer liable. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Oops, sorry, I just turned the light off accidentally. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's informed consent, and nobody's been given informed consent because there is no way to give anybody informed consent. Nobody knows what's in the vaccine. Yeah, we've seen that you can open up the package insert and it's blank, so nobody knows what's in there. Nobody knows what the long-term effects are, so there can be no informed consent.
Yeah.
You know, so you know that kind of almost goes away because it's a given. There is no informed consent, so you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But as I said, it's holding them liable for it, and we've seen the reactions from a range of reactions from the people we've served it on, from mild apathy to gratitude in some cases, to one school we went to just a couple of days ago. They saw the headmistress saw that we had a couple of cameras. She said, "Right, I'm not gonna stand and talk to you if you've got cameras on." And we said, we're just about to say, okay, we'll turn the cameras up, but she was already gone. She was gone. They were behind like a security fence, and we were just pressing the buzzer trying to get them out again. They wouldn't come out. So, yeah, there's fear. There has to be they have to know something about this to be so scared.
Of course. But, you know, especially what you're saying is that if you damage people, then you will be held responsible. Because regardless of what the government are talking about with mandatory vaccines, in English common law, forced vaccination is common assault. And if any damage is done as a result of that forced vaccination, it then becomes GBH. Right? So, and that's protected in the common law. And there's no way that they can get rid of that. You know, to bring in mandatory vaccinations, they would have to do a complete upheaval of the entire English legal system or common law system, which ain't happening quickly. That'll take decades to do. So it's not happening. So I don't think there'll ever be mandatory vaccines unless they do some kind of false flag, and it'll be a national emergency under which martial law suspends the common law, and then they do what they want. But I can't see that happening, to be honest.
Well, the other thing to remember is the word mandatory. The word mandatory is legalese. Actually means voluntary. Voluntary. Yeah. So does compulsory. It means voluntary. So yeah, there'll never be mandatory in the sense that we know it, because it all has to be voluntary.
Well, I think what you're doing there, Dave, is absolutely brilliant. I was watching the videos of going into those places, and you can see the fear on some of the managers of those centres. They don't want to be getting served those things. Those notices are powerful. They are powerful, and I think it's great what you're doing. So I'm going to start working towards wrapping this up now, because we're coming to the end of time. So, you know, we can talk about the problems all day long, yeah, but I also like to have solutions. What solutions have we got as people that we can use in our real lives in order to take back control?
Well, that's what's in my common law talk, essentially. Just knowledge. It simply comes down to knowledge, right? Knowledge of self and knowledge of who these people are, right? And when you start to realise that, your common sense kicks in, because it's essentially it comes down to somebody in a fancy suit or a costume, pretending that they've got authority over you, trying to impose something on you that you wouldn't accept if a stranger came up to you and tried to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, great, Dave. That's brilliant. So before we finish, I'd like to ask my guests if they could recommend one book to our audience that could really help them, you know, really be informative to them and me. What would it be, Dave?
Oh, it'd be, as far as the common law and Freeman movement is the old favourite, Freedom is More Than Just a 7-Letter Word, by
Veronica Chapman.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a great book. Yeah.
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 It encapsulates it all in a nice, easy to understand format, and I've not seen the like in any other book like it.
No, that's a really good choice. I remember reading that at the time, going, "Wow, this is just such." I felt like it was magic, you know, coming off the pages. Wow, the power that you feel from it. You know, this idea of understanding our true nature. A lot of it comes from understanding how to enforce your rights or how to demonstrate your rights. And until we know them, we can't use them. And that's what was coming, leaping off the page. Great book, great suggestion. Okay, Dave, if people want to find you, what would be a good place to look? Okay, I don't mean literally where you live. I mean online. Online.
So you can find my website is allegedlydave.com.
Yeah.
And my YouTube channel is dmurphy25 on YouTube. And if you go to BitChute and Odyssey, it's allegedly Dave.
Fantastic, Dave. Have you got one final message for our viewers?
One final message, yeah. The opposite of courage, or the opposite of courage is not cowardice. It's conformity. It's literally conformity. Stop conforming. Be yourself. yeah, and fight this, because we are now, right now, in the greatest peril that humanity has ever faced. Yeah, and it literally comes down to us. There aren't any heroes coming. We are the heroes, and we've got to stand up. That's it.
Fantastic. Dave, it's been such a great pleasure chatting to you, and it's great chatting about these subjects. I haven't really talked about them for a while, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks for coming on. I'd love to speak to you again soon in the future to hear what you're up to with your projects, and we can talk about the other things which we haven't even touched on today, like the breatharianism, the urine therapy, the Black Hebrew Israelites, all those things, fascinating subjects. Let's talk about them another time. Dave, thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.